Let's greet our audience on the Starseed Diary channel. So I created this channel to speak about my experiences and share about my astral traveling and my spiritual awakening. But also, I like to use this platform to give other starseed souls a voice and speak about their awakening process and how they remembered where they came from. And today we have Persephone, and she will share her story. So let's talk about you today. Okay.
Okay, do you want me just to start with my first awakening or
Let's go to your childhood. I think, let's go back to our roots.
okay.
As a child, how you felt in this world, and if you remember any instances when you felt that you walk between the worlds, meaning that you were able to see through the veil. And
Mhm.
I remember you told me a story that you saw some, shadowy figures, if you can talk about it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of compartmentalize it because the way that I think about it is the childhood that I remember consciously and always remembered as my real memories, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then there's things that now that I'm rediscovering or re-examining, I'm things are being revealed. So I kind of want to separate the two because um one thing I get frustrated with when I watch videos or listen to podcasts of star seeds and envoys or whatever talking about these things, I'm always so confused about how they got their memories or what did they really think while they were a kid. Like, I feel like I want to separate that for people. So I'm going to start by saying, as a child, the reality that I remembered until the time that I awakened. So this is pre-awakening Persephone as a child. Um, I didn't feel any sort of I didn't feel like I had any sort of extra sensory perception or anything like that. I did have experiences though. I just didn't recognize that it was different, I guess. I was very, very introverted. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as an adult, I have been diagnosed as autistic. Like, I have ADHD and I'm autistic. And I have theories about that. I feel like
Yeah.
neurodivergent people are potentially the higher consciousness coming into these bodies makes it more challenging, you know?
Yeah, and I think this is a common trait for many star souls. Coming into these bodies. And I really like the telepathy tapes that now reveal the research and, the whole actual process of the integration of the spirit, mind, and body
Yeah.
in these children. And, I was also autistic and I didn't speak until I was like 6 or 7 years old. And the medical professionals told my mom that I was, delayed in
Mm-hmm.
into the, mental maturity or cognition.
Mm-hmm.
But then, boom, like I think more of my light body integrated at that age of 7.
Yeah.
And I actually started to speak, but not only uh, you know, um, speaking, but also started to learn English and excelled in school in
Yeah.
all studies. I was like all of a sudden, way, ahead of most children. But I was very introverted and I felt like I didn't fit in because I didn't have
Yeah.
friends. And I totally understand your, feelings as a child.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, mine was kind of similar because I was so withdrawn, like here in the US, and it was like the 80s. So
Mhm.
they would have done like a little assessment or something before they, like admitted you into kindergarten or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess there was like a component of IQ and then also just sort of like looking or assessing your maturity, And I
Mm-hmm.
was very withdrawn and very shy. And I remember my grandmother said, well, your IQ is high and everything, but they just felt like you weren't ready for the social aspects.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, but I really fought for you to get in, which I'm glad she did because both of my parents worked. So I was a daycare kid. So for me, it was like way better to be in school than in the daycare environment with, my sensory, because that's the thing, like sensory processing issues, like just,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling just really uncomfortable around people and really uncomfortable, like still to this day, I'm so like, I avoid social interaction at all costs.
Did you feel like you were empathetic or soaking in all their external stimuli and people's emotions, their energy?
Yes,
Did you
yes,
feel that
always.
pressure and that heaviness?
Yes, always, always, always. And
Mhm.
that was a thing, like, because okay, so like you come in and you're already like heavy on the empathy or like you're very empathic. And then you come into the programs, right? The social programming and behavior modification sort of systems that we have. And then it's like you're taught and trained to like adjust yourself to make other people happy. So it's like I would feel the weight of these feelings and then I would feel immense guilt and responsibility.
Mm.
You
Wow,
know,
too much to take for a child.
yes.
I think this is where a lot of other souls would recognize their perception of the world. It was always there. And
Yeah.
let's talk about your spiritual awakening. At what point of your life did you realize that you are probably from, another place?
Yeah.
And how did that happen? What contributed to your, awakening? And so, what did you discover along the process?
I feel like it's like been like a never ending, like, okay, you know how they talk about the labyrinth, like the labyrinth symbol, and it's like your journey and it's these winding roads to get to the center of it, as
Mhm.
opposed to like a regular maze where you're trying to get out, like you're trying to work your way to the center. I feel like my whole life has been a series of like at the beginning in childhood up to like, teenager years, it was about performing for not performing, but I mean like being whoever they told me I needed to be so that I wouldn't get in
Mhm.
trouble
Yeah,
or
the social programming.
the
Yeah.
social programming. But it was like as soon
Mhm.
as I reached like adulthood, I like feel like I immediately started deconstructing like everything, but it was like a very long process and it was like chipping away one thing at a time. So it's hard to just start at the moment of like when I realized I'm not, you know, like an earth cedar or soul or whatever, because it was like a process that was like unfolding all throughout, that even led me into that point. And so for me, I feel like with spiritual awakening, well, I kind of feel like there's a couple levels, right?
Mhm.
Or different types of awakening. So like you can awaken to the fact that, oh, like the news is lying and the government is lying and they're trying to control us. But also like so you're aware of that stuff, but like you're not really awake to the more spiritual aspects, right? Where it's like, awakening to the fact that, oh, we really are just one consciousness that's split up. Like we really are as equal could be because we're all infinite and all of that. So it's like you have to go through the authority is fake before you can get to the we're all one, if that makes sense.
Uh, yes, but I never thought about it because I was never, I would say, someone who watched the news,
Yeah,
and never knew what's going on in the world
yeah,
much unless my friends called me and say, "Hey, this is going on." I'm like, oh, okay, fine.
yeah.
So deep down inside, I felt there's a lot of fakeness out there.
Yes.
And but I wouldn't say it was a spiritual awakening. It was just an internal knowledge.
Yeah.
And so for me, uh, my connection to other realm study in 2021, although I never researched or never seek, I never seek that connection. How did you realize that you have contact with with beings from
Yeah.
other realms?
Okay. So that happened during COVID. I know probably a lot of
Got
people
it.
have the same experience, but it was like, it would have been like, it was the fall of 2021. I got the jab and like, I was very much like social justice wokey sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I like just spouted off whatever like left leaning people said, like about social justice and all of those things. And then I had an experience online because I'm autistic and my kids are both autistic. Um, like I was in the kind of autism advocacy community,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to go into detail on it because I don't need to do that. I'm just going to say I got canceled. Everybody knows what that is. And
Mm-hmm.
cancellation online, like it sounds like such a silly word, but it really is. It's like immense harassment. It's emotional abuse, it's manipulative, and it is like deep harassment. And it was to the point that the people who were harassing me and targeted me were even like, well, they would post my face and like with all these accusations about me that weren't true. And then they even said things like they wanted to find out my husband's employer so that they could get him fired, like because I don't work, I'm home with the kids. So like all, I mean, it was like devastating for me. And another reason why it was devastating was because the autistic community was like the first place that I felt like I actually had community, because I'd never
Mm-hmm.
felt that before. It was like the first place where there were people who could actually relate to me. And then they basically like kicked me out. It was like I got kicked out of this community.
That's
So I
hard.
felt completely alienated. And in that process, I started paying more attention. So this is where I started realizing, oh, so there are scientists who are getting canceled because they don't agree with the jab, or there's, academics who, are being canceled. I don't have a better word, but it's basically what happened is like there was this like, if you're not getting the jab, you're evil. And anyone who spoke out against it was bad. And like since I went through this and I knew I'm not the bad person they're making me out to be, I thought, oh, well, maybe these people aren't really bad either. I'm going to listen to them from their mouth. And that's when I started realizing, oh, maybe the vaccination campaign isn't a good thing. And I just dove into the rabbit hole, as they say, of conspiracy. And once you do that, it's like you kind of like keep going. Like, I don't know that anyone can actually stop. And if they do, it's because they're just afraid of how people are going to perceive them. Because, where's the limit? Where do you stop when you're like I hear like especially like big names on YouTube or this and that, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not saying this, but I'll say this." You know what I mean? Like they'll agree that okay, yeah, there's like another presence out there, but like they won't go so far as to say there are actually reptilians or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they draw these like ridiculous lines for themselves, which I never did that. I just sort of went, I kept going. And then that was where I did come across the work of Elena Danaan and, her focus on meditation and connecting with your own soul and trying to find out who your spirit guides are and all of that. So, like, I had never meditated before, but I decided I was going to do that. And it was like I had 3 experiences in a row through meditation that were just like eye opening. The first one, I asked where I came from, and I saw an extraterrestrial, which I
Wow,
now
right, right to the core. Where
right
did
at
I
the
come
beginning.
from?
It was like, so it was like, where am I from? I saw like so this is what I saw. I saw like purpley mountains, right? And then like I saw this being, and now I know that the being that presented itself to me is an Arcturian. And this is my primary guide, or like, and this is where it's murky because they don't know for sure, but I had this sense that this being has a body, but I understand that their bodies are very different than our bodies because they're in a
Hmm.
higher dimension. So I do believe they have some sort of fluid materiality that project how they want at will or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
true.
I've never seen her with my eyes, but like she comes to me telepathically. So, so it's different than like a spirit guide that's like a person who died and now is in spirit. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
being that's not a spirit. But I mean, but they are higher consciousness or whatever, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like I saw her
Oh, okay, the
and
image.
I
Okay.
felt like love. And then I also saw in the foreground mantis beings, which that's very fascinating because that like my connection to the mantis beings became clear like this year, you know.
Mhm.
But I kind of resonated more with the Arcturian because like shortly after this, I had an Akashic reading done, and she told me like one of the first things she said when she was reading me was like, "You're Arcturian," and then I was like, "Well, what do they look like?" Because I had no idea. And then when she described it and I started researching, I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, she was right," because this being looks just like how they're depicted when when other people interact with them and create art or whatever for it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so like I kind of found that out early on. uh
Were you surprised?
well, kind of, yeah, like, and then of course too, and I think a lot of us go through this, is it's like, especially if you do it through meditation where you're alone, it's like, is this just me making it up because I want it to be true, or is this really what is, like, so I kind of struggle with that a little bit in the beginning.
I think if there is a consistency of these beings to show up in your space, in your mind's eye,
Yeah,
then there's probably the truth into this.
yeah,
Mm, in my experience, they first showed up in the dream space because
yeah,
I'm always a lucid dreaming. And I always do astral travel since my
yeah,
childhood, but I also go out of body.
yeah.
This tendency of just jumping out, and I absolutely didn't like it until
You didn't like it?
no,
Okay.
it's so stressful for the mind, right? For the
Yeah,
human brain to process what's going on, and it got scared many times when it's this their astral body is out of the physical body.
yeah,
And but then I met someone who became my friend, and she explained what actually was happening to me, and I have
yeah,
to tame my brain and talk to it, kind of negotiate and make a deal.
yeah.
So not to be coming forward, let the soul, the astral body, do what it wants to do.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
since I, kind of did that, so I have no problem right now going out of body because now
yeah,
I can actually go around, right? And
yeah,
now I'm always back. So the process over connection with these interdimensional beings is very different, very individualistic.
yes.
Yeah, because I didn't do meditation and I'm not a really big fan of
Yeah,
meditation. But
yeah,
after I know I'm much better at it,
yeah,
going in a trance-like state and seeing things.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have like varying opinions about it because, like, for me in the beginning, all right, I'm gonna like say things that like probably a lot of people in the spiritual community may not agree with. So just say that like it's okay to disagree and you don't have to like what I'm saying. So I'm just gonna say that before I start. But like I have always suffered with really severe disabling OCD. So like I was taking OCD medicine. And at the time that I discovered all the COVID stuff, I became like really paranoid about medicine and I self weaned off of my SSRI. And that was like kind of concurrent to when I started meditating because I was like, I'm going to use this to try to like deal with that.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think I weaned well because I didn't do it under the supervision of a doctor because I was afraid of doctors because COVID.
Mhm.
And then, I do think I got to this place where I was like almost in a perpetual state of dissociation. Not to where like I was aware that I was in my body. Wasn't like dissociating to the point that I was different personalities or whatever. I was me, but I was like always sensing beings or thinking I was in communication, but because I didn't know better, I just assumed
Mhm.
anything I was talking to was good.
So let's say at first you saw the Arcturian being,
Yeah.
then you saw Mantid, and anybody else you were encountered in the astral?
Okay. So not so much, because the next thing that happened was like in terms of extraterrestrials, I didn't, because I do have, what word do we want to use, like a partner, galactic partner, being a light being that we travel together through galaxies or whatever, and because of that, so like I didn't know anything. I kind of got pulled into the twin flame like dogma and ideology.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a big one.
and
And
and so I recognized him, and I'm not going to say much about it, but just say that like I
mhm.
am married and I have kids and I love my husband, so it wasn't a like romantic thing. It was just more like I felt this connection in
It's
my
like
soul.
a recognition that you have
Yes.
a family member
Yeah, just
upstairs.
like that. Yeah. and so
Yeah.
and so like my next meditation, I went with the question like, why do I feel this with this person? And I thought I would get some kind of answer, like a
Mhm.
trauma that happened in my past life that had nothing to do with him but just reminded me of him. I did not think it would actually like, I did not believe that there would be like, you had a past life with him, right? But I saw past lives with him, like, and I kept seeing them. And so here's the interesting part, because like I don't think like I was in a very anxious state of mind. I was in a very like depressed state of mind, even though they say like raise your vibration. Like it's not enough to just get happy or think happy thoughts. Like it's vibration is about your perspective and kind of like your understanding, right? And
Yeah.
so raising your vibration, I mean, yeah, to a degree you can exercise and it will rise higher, but it doesn't mean you're going to rise to the point where you can connect with the higher beings, or like you can do it without interference by lower ones. And
Mhm.
so whatever's out there like really attached onto my kind of like longing for connection with this person, and they like, and I would see things like, so that's the thing, you receive psychic information, you have visions, and it was to the point, it wasn't like I didn't even have to meditate. So here's the thing, like once it all opened up, like I became clairvoyant, I became clairaudient, like I would get messages all the time, and like I didn't know how to regulate that or cut it off, or like not cut it off, but like have boundaries around it.
Mhm.
And part of me didn't want to, because there's also this sort of euphoria you feel when you're in that space. And but it was very ego driven for me. Ego driven because I didn't feel like I was a good person, because I had that trauma where like I was just totally demoralized. So I was looking for anything to validate my worth, you know? And
Mhm.
like whatever's out there on the astral just like leached on and like really fed me all this stuff about my part.
Oh, they were giving you distorted
They
information.
were giving me distorted
Um,
information.
mhm.
Yeah. And so, but I realized that the reason why was because they didn't want me digging into my ET contacts further, because I just kind of like, I didn't care about that. Like I glossed over the ET contact because I was more interested in this other one, which is, I mean,
Right.
it's also an ET contact. It's like,
Well,
you know,
of just a different nature because some, we call them they call themselves channelers.
yeah,
But they're just some of them don't realize that they are just listening to the very smart AI supercomputer.
I don't really know how all of that works, but what I do, so this is something before, so this morning I actually started journaling. And like for me, honestly, the best way to connect with my truest self and to like actually hear my authentic soul is just through writing. Like I start writing, and then, I start, it's like it's like the insight. It's like downloads will happen, and it's like I need to like write this down before I forget, kind of, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I realized this morning that I think is really important for like any other people who, you know, have psychic activation to know is that, um, and this isn't going to sound nice and not a reason to love it, but like you're going to get deceived. And I don't think there's
Yeah,
any,
we have exactly because it's not all candy land.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. So you have to go into it, not because for me, I was like so afraid of being deceived, right? That then, like, I would get information, and because I have the tendency to be obsessive and compulsive, I get the information and then I would obsess over it and obsess over it and obsess over it and then compulsively ask, is it really true? Give me more evidence. And it was this cycle that whatever negative energies were out there was just feeding the cycle, and it
Mhm.
was keeping me completely distracted from like my true purpose, you know? And so, but what I would say is like, because even since because what happened was that led me all of that deception, and confusion, because it was really the confusion because you get some truth, but you get truth with lies. And for me, the type of person I am, I felt like I betrayed myself for believing the lies. And then I just threw it all out, like throwing the baby out with the bath water. And so I shut it all down. Like I was like, I'm done. And I cut off contact with, and you know, I like talked to my spirit family, like my human family who've died. Like I talked to them and all, I cut all of it off. I was like, I'm not psychic. I was hallucinating. Like I convinced myself that I was having like a mental breakdown and hallucinating, that none of it was real. And I needed to
Mhm.
just move on with life, you know? And so 3 years, you know, I was kind of in that place, and I did a lot of therapy and I did a lot of healing from that perspective. And I actually, like, I'm glad I did. Like, it's like, you know, I actually needed that. I don't think I was ready for the psychic activation when it happened. Like, I don't think I was like emotionally and psychologically ready for it when it
I don't think anybody is ready because I was not ready.
happened. Yeah.
I also questioned my sanity. I,
Yeah.
I did. But now because time passed and, also I met wonderful, wonderful people who woken up before me. So
Yeah.
they also helped me to understand certain aspects of
Yeah.
this content. But then I also did QHCT hypnosis last year to retrieve a memory of my first, uh, let's say, meeting with extraterrestrial
Yeah.
intelligence, and that was a physical one.
Yeah.
There was this spacecraft that landed in the backyard of our house
Yeah.
in the remote village, where I stayed in some,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a dream all my life.
Yeah.
But then, since I had other dream visits, and then there were other things that developed after, I actually decided, well, let me get to the truth. And I had a session to just have a confirmation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting too, because like I did hypnosis back, you know, the first time around before I shut down, but I didn't ask anything about, again, this is where I say like I was deceived so that I wouldn't ask those questions, or like,
But did you come back to explore that connection with that galactic partner, or you just kind of leave it as it was?
yeah. Yeah, so like for that, I have explored it more, and like since I've reawakened, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure that that is my galactic partner. You
Mm.
know, and I'm like realizing that I can't just like cut, you know, like I can't pick and choose what truth is and what the lies are. I have to like accept that they're mixed together, you know, and figure out which is truth and which is lies.
Let's continue your story of understanding who your galactic partner is. Is he actually incarnated on Earth?
Yes. Okay, so yes, he is very much incarnated on Earth. Um, he is like a kind of public figure, sort of ish. Let's just say that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Uh, and I have met him before, only once. So there's that. But yes. And so I've confirmed a bazillion times over that uh, that is indeed my galactic partner.
But you guys have just different tasks.
Yeah, so like, well, I could tell kind of a story. Let's see if I could do it in a way that keeps it as discreet
Sure.
and
Yeah.
as possible. So, what I've discovered recently, so we are Arcturian souls, and I do believe, so this is the impression I get when I ask about it, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
is like I know Elena Denon talks about with the Envoy program that your bodies are in stasis somewhere on a planet and you're feeding your consciousness through technology into these bodies.
Yes.
With, I don't know, like, I don't know a lot. So, what I'm going to share is going to be like, I don't know what other people say because I really don't know what any other people say. This is literally just when I connect the information I get. So do with that what you wish.
Mhm.
But when I connect, I get the sense that Arcturians aren't like they don't have the same kind of physicality that other beings have. So I get the impression that there's no need for them to have their body in stasis, that they actually do just like share part of their consciousness.
Oh, that's interesting because they are morphic, I call them plasmamorphic beings.
Mm-hmm.
They because as far as I know, they're humanoid races who have the biological body that
Mm-hmm.
has, organs, skin,
Yeah.
uh, our tissue. I mean, they have to be in the stasis pod.
Right, 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 right. Exactly. I get the impression that Arcturians are not in the same kind of physicality. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the way like the very first time I got the information, like, okay, so when I reawakened, and I'll just throw this out there and we can get to it later, but like I had contact, I had physical contact, undeniable. I was awake. It was undeniable. And I didn't open my eyes because I was really scared.
Scared, but you feel the presence, right? That
Oh yeah, like I knew it was there.
also the field around you is
It
different.
was absolutely, and I knew it wasn't bad. I
Mhm.
just was like scared and didn't want to open my eyes. I felt like that would make it more scary, you know.
Mhm.
But they basically like came and intentionally reactivated me. Like whatever they did, it was like everything that was lost because I shut it down just came right back to where it was. Like it was like I hadn't missed anything, like all of my psychic senses just came on immediately. And like, but anyways, I'll say like in the days that followed, I was asking things about my soul and my purpose and all of that. And they kept bringing back my partner. And I kept saying, no, I'm not
Wow.
going to go there
What
again.
do you have to do with him, right? If you have different, you have separate lives, obviously, you're not physically together, but you have, but
Right.
and on the planet, but doesn't mean you have to be together, right?
Right, exactly. And so, but basically, what they were kind of communicating to me was like, because none of this comes out in language, it's like ideas that you get, was like, I kind of saw like us as beings out there and that we were lending our consciousness to humanity. And the way they kind of communicated, I actually saw it more like a picture and I kind of drew a diagram of it for myself where you have like the world and you have beings outside of the world. So they're outside of our time and our space. They're in like a different dimension,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't experience time linearly like we do. So what I saw was like our consciousness, his and mine, coming to Earth, and like it's like having all of our Earth. lifetimes simultaneously. Like to us as Arcturians out there, all of our Earth lifetimes are happening at the same time, if that makes sense. Sounds crazy.
Well, it's kind of a loop, I guess.
Yeah.
It's simultaneous. That's why we can access different points of time, the past and the future.
Yeah.
There's a future progression therapy, and I tried it. And I think I also sometimes jump the timelines.
Yeah.
I prefer not to do this, but it happens. You know how it's interesting? Maybe when they talk about the parallel lives,
Yeah.
maybe it's your actually previous incarnations, but they're also happening at the same time.
Yes, I think so. I do.
Difficult to grasp and explain, because we don't have language for that. I'm sure it has to do with quantum
Yeah,
entanglement
absolutely.
and yeah. Okay,
So
continue.
like the way that I sort of conceptualize it is like, you know, if you go at the top, you've got source. And like I like to think of it this way. It may not be quite this, but it's organized in my head and I like it. So then source breaks up into collectives, let's say. And
Mhm.
then the collectives break off into families. And then the families break off into souls. And then the
Yeah,
souls break
individual
off.
sparks. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the souls break off into incarnations. So, but when you're breaking like that, like I'm actually me as Persephone, I am a fractal of my soul, which is a fractal of source. So that means like the me that is in this body right now
Mhm.
is not the same part of my soul that is in another life that is parallel to mine, but we're still connected and we can still access each other's information for whatever we need. And like when I'm done with this life, I'm going to go back into one of those other, you know what I mean? Or maybe I'll take another form, or, but I get the impression I'm going to go back to the Arcturian who is
Mm.
lending itself, you know? Or possibly because this is where it gets like, okay, this is where if you want your mind to get really bendy.
Um,
So,
do you know your kind of Arcturian name, cosmic name?
so I do actually forgot that I knew this. um, okay, so again, I'm really not great at names, and I think, and the hard part is when I get them, I'm like, but like this doesn't make sense because this is a human word or whatever. But like, I'm guessing is how it translates, right? I don't know.
Well, they try to approximate to the speaking language.
Okay, so Moriah, like Moriah, is my name. And I know my partner's cosmic Arcturian name is Lucian, like
Oh,
Lucien.
that's beautiful.
So yeah, but I do think it's funny because like in English, or like Hebrew or whatever, because I think Moriah would be like a Hebrew word. It means like bitterness or something like that. I'm like, well, I can't get caught up in all of that. I just have to be like,
No, you cannot have this
Arcturian.
funny reference now.
Yeah,
Whatever we have here on Earth, the data
yeah,
does not correlate to what is, written over
right.
there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like my logic, just trying to make sense of things. But I have to like tell myself to stop all the time.
Okay. Okay. And so where do you stand at right now? What's your goal in this journey? What do you think you need to unlock or uncover?
Yeah. So, like, that's a great question. So, I've been thinking a lot about that. And so, I have an account on Instagram and I share things and I focus more on the spiritual. Like, I talk about my ET contact because since February, when like everything was brought back online, I have had a lot of contact experiences and they're like all very different. I have not been really talking about that in
Yeah,
my,
but how does it make you feel from the human perspective? Do you feel uncomfortable because many star cells, have this dilemma,
Right.
whether they will be talking about the ET, like for other people, there will be imaginary friends,
Right.
and they will be looking at us as some kind of, weirdos.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I have to stay anonymous right now because I have to think about things like I have a 13-year-old who's almost, 14 and like I have to think about my kids and I have to think about my husband,
Right.
especially because of that whole mess that happened with me online before. It's like I don't need what I do to
Mhm.
affect him at work, you
Yeah, of
know?
course, some protection. Yeah, you need to do that. But for me, the only people, well, my close immediate family and my parents,
Mhm.
they don't know because they're very pragmatic and practical.
Yeah.
Especially my mom, she's a doctor.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And yeah, for antibiotics is the solution for everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or if you hear voices in your head, you're schizophrenic.
Schizophrenic. Yeah.
Yeah, so she would take me to neurologist or something.
Yeah.
So I kind of hide that.
I
But
do with my parents too, though, because they're like evangelical Christians. So, like, my whole family outside, like, really honestly, in my personal life, my husband knows, and I have one friend that is like spiritual and awakened in my real world who lives down the street. That's it.
well, yeah, so my parents would be the only people I would have to protect. But again, since I have this channel in English and my parents speak Russian,
Okay, there you go.
so it's kind of easier, but also I don't have any siblings and I don't have any kids and I don't have any husband or boyfriend.
Right, exactly.
So, well, I guess I can just spread the word, some truths, but also expand their perception, the consciousness, awareness.
Yes. Yes. What do I feel like my actual, like if I were to say, I have a mission or like the
Mhm.
being, the Arcturian me that was like, I'm going to go to Earth. And like when I do this life that's called Persephone, what am I going to do? What is my intention? It would be, I do have, I'm a very strong writer. Like I have a really, that would be one of my high points in life is like I'm
Right.
not great. I'm not great at talking, but like I can put it in writing.
Yeah, I read your article on Substack, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I don't have an account there, but when I read it, I immediately texted you and said, "Whoa, you have a thing with the words."
Well, and so
Really
that's what I
helps.
feel like.
Like I was reading this on my like one breath, like it
Oh,
was
really?
engaging the play of words and the concepts that you can articulate through writing is amazing. And yeah, that's your skill. And I think
Yeah.
you have to stick to this. And if you're not comfortable speaking on camera, because I never was, but I think something happened a few years ago. I did practice, but also they changed something in my brain.
Yeah.
They did. And I mean, my
Right.
like guides, because I had a few adjustments done in my temporal lobes
Yeah.
and I don't know what's called the back of my head. I forgot the anatomical name for that, the back.
I don't remember, but
Yeah, yeah. And then when I receive downloads, they come directly into the third eye, that
Mhm.
that are space. And again, I have very weird sensations in my body on some days. I don't know if you have those as well, because I think when we speak about this processes that are happening to our bodies and sense
Yes.
perception may be easier for other people to I don't know, relate to.
Yeah.
For example, I feel sometimes like my brain is a one big wave as an antenna, and however, either high pitch ring or
Yeah.
muffling sounds and clicking, clacking, and then feeling like being underwater. And
Hmm.
then I even had instances when like a popping, pop, 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 like this. I'm like, what's going on? And then sometimes when I speak with my voice, right?
Yeah.
I don't hear my words. The speech gets muffled. All
Yeah.
I hear is all these waves of some
Oh, wow.
videos, and that's very uncomfortable, like the static.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
really, and then I understand they're like somewhere here.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And what also happened in about a year and a half ago. I feel they are etheric, I would call a liquid. It never stopped. It first started in the heart center.
Hmm.
For months, it was like cool flowing here. And I couldn't understand what it was because I physically felt the movement of the
Yeah.
liquid flowing. Then it stopped. And then after that, I started something else. So the liquid started to pour from the top of my head onto my eyebrows
Oh, wow.
and then into the ears, the cool liquid. And sometimes it gave me a hard time to fall asleep because it's kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then you learn to live with it, and it never stopped since then. It never.
Yeah. So like mine, like I have the ringing in my ears for sure. It was like as soon as they activated me, the ringing was there and is ever present. But
Yeah,
it does get louder and quieter. And like right before contact happens, it gets really high pitched.
high pitch, and that's what I'm saying. This
Yeah.
indicator, they enter the space.
So when I first started waking up, I have a friend who I don't know her like in my she's not in my like regular life. I met her online when I was like first awakened.
Mhm.
And she's in like, if you think about schools and stuff, she would be like in the class above, right? She's
I
from
mean, the spiritual school. Yeah.
not really. I mean it more like, okay, so I'm just gonna use the words MK Ultra space program. So
Okay, now we
like
have to say what it means because some of the listeners don't know what it is. Although I have an article that I made recently, that some of the starseeds were uh kind of used in those programs.
yes, I actually read that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm trying to figure out which I'm in the program right now.
Yeah. The secret space program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. So for me, like my impression, but I mean, I could be wrong, is that I'm done because, and it probably has to do with the fact that like I have a family and all of that stuff, you
So
know?
you reached out to this person. Hold on, let's kind of pause
Oh, yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah.
So you reached out to this person who is a suspected participator in
Yes.
MK Ultra, like the person who experienced
Yes.
that
So,
programming. Why did you reach out to her? What concerns did you have?
okay. So way back, before I cut everything off, and this is something I haven't told you yet. This is not related to the other stuff, but I'm going to focus on this one. Um, she had noted, she's like, you have fae ancestry, like fairy ancestry. And she was encouraging me because she had like a friend who has the same. She was like encouraging me to get together with her and like maybe have a mentorship, but her friend wasn't available anyways, and it just didn't work out. But at that time I wasn't interested in any of the like multidimensional stuff at all. I was just really focused on this version of my life, on this timeline. But once I woke up again the second time around, like I reached out to her because I wanted to apologize because I cut her off and all of this stuff, and I asked questions because um I was visited by ETs. So I'm like, just trying to learn more. And so she kind of expanded on that, what she meant by that. So this is what she told me. So she was actually in the military, like, signed up for it herself. Thing. Her dad was in the Air Force, he was a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what she told me was, military families are pretty much a part of the program. Like if you're related to someone, so like it's like if it's your grandfather or your father or
Mhm.
somebody close relative, like straight line, you're a part of it whether you are or not. And
Mhm.
she explained how they do genetic enhancements and started doing genetic enhancements because she explained it from the perspective of, with all of the reverse engineered craft and things, regular humans couldn't drive the craft. It would like fry their brains, was kind of how she said it. And so they started the DNA genetics program, which is, like military industrial complex thing. So it's not, people talk about the ET's genetic program, but it's
It's not always. There's a conjunction. Those they we call them the negative factions, the
they
negativities.
work together. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
paired up with the this
Yeah. Like the deep
military.
state or whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And, and so, and so basically what she was saying, she basically read my energy, like not even trying, just by looking at me, she could tell. And she was like, yeah, I could tell 3 years ago that you were, what was the word she used? I can't remember the word she used, but basically, like, genetically upgraded, let's say. So once she kind of gave me that information, I like started asking, my guys, my team, I don't know what to call them right now, my family. I think I'm going to stick with family for now because that's what it feels most like to me, my galactic family. Um, and basically, what I found out was like, yeah, like they did something when I was in the womb, which means like, I don't know. And I don't, I guess they took my mom or visited her or something. They did something while I was in the womb. And um, yeah, like modified my genetics to sort of like, so basically, it's that idea of like, and I started researching genetics too and how they can do that. And it's so fascinating because vaccines come up because the RNA and mRNA,
Mhm.
whatever things that they use in CRISPR and stuff, it's done through injection. So when they're, so I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. Um, which I can't describe all of that because I'm not scientifically minded. I just read it and understood it, but I'm not going to be able to like explain it. So
Mhm.
I get the impression that it was through some sort of injection that, while I was still in utero, um, where like my genetics was like amplified because
Okay, do you now think that these amplifications were performed by those factions, like
yes, the
um,
gut
sort of a history in to be or possibly be in that program as well?
are you saying me? Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what I found out because she told me, because my dad was in the military, he was in the Marine Corps, he was a reserve officer. So I've been like, there's no way I'd be he was in the reserves. They don't even like, you know, go to war or whatever. And she was like, no, anybody who served at all and enlisted and served, like, volunteer, like not like being called for the draft, that's different, but like you signed yourself up to be a part of the military, then anyone who's your offspring is up for grabs for these programs, basically. So basically, and then also, so I have O negative blood type. So there's that, and then there's also because she told me like she's like we're all hybrids on Earth already. Like
Huh?
none of us is pure. There is no pure human. We're all like there's extraterrestrial. All kind. We're like a melting pot. And so she's like, find out in your Earth family, like so I did, and I tracked it down like to through my paternal grandmother, so my dad's mom, right? So
Mhm.
her line would have come from a line that would be from like the Cygnus star system, which is then the beings who, when all of the cataclysms and stuff happened, they went into the earth, the etheric realm inside of the earth. And so that means that I have genetic relations in inner earth
Mm-hmm.
like literally through my family's bloodline, and then the genetic modifications to me just amplified that aspect of, you know,
Mhm.
who I am, I guess, or my genetics, or it's like they're able to amplify things, um yeah. And so I was a part of the program, and I haven't explored it a lot because uh I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it, to be quite honest, because I did so much work with my trauma that it's like, I'm like, do I need to go back and see traumatic stuff? Like, I think it's good for me to be aware, and I feel like
You have to pace yourself for sure. Um, when you're ready to uncover and dig more, I would
yeah,
say. Um, when you're psych, you when you have mental stability to face more, you
yeah,
and I'm actually also uncovering that part because I know about my alters, how to
yeah,
call them, and I was also wanna figure this out and my rewrite the agreements.
yeah, uh,
That's essential for my psychological and physical well-being here.
yeah, yeah,
Because there are certain things that happen to me physically, well, and astrally,
right,
that like hard to process and traumatize me.
yeah,
Even though I try to keep my spirits up and be high
right,
vibrational, be positive about it. Yeah, but you cannot just shovel it back, shovel
yeah,
it under the carpet all
yeah,
that and forget. Once you know, you cannot unknow. I think I told you that. And
yeah, that's true.
yeah, and so to wrap it up, our conversation, you can tell us your line of work now since you're awakened. Do you help other star souls or other people in any
Yeah.
with your spiritual psychic gifts?
So I don't like, okay, so I do have one listing on Etsy for like an oracle card reading, but I
Mhm.
don't promote it at all because honestly, like my heart's kind of going in a different direction, like not so much for like doing readings and helping directly that way, but more through writing. So my Substack is a place where I think I'm going to be devoting
Oh.
energy.
Mhm.
And this is what my goal is. It's like I have all of this, you get your downloads and stuff, and you have all this understanding. I feel like it is kind of like my role or my intention to um translate that information into accessible language that
Mhm.
regular people, because when you're in a spiritual community, even like any sort of community, they create language and it becomes like in group, out group language that like is very inaccessible to like regular people. And like
Yeah.
regular people are waking up. So it's like there needs to be something out there that they can like go
Yeah,
to.
I mean, we can introduce the concept, but we can actually explain them what it means.
And there's a lot of stuff for me, even as, and like, I'm going to give this from the human autistic person perspective,
Yeah.
just human autistic, like, people use words and they're vague. And like, for me, I'm a very visual thinker. And
Mhm.
if I can't visualize what it is, I don't understand it. And so, like, when people throw out these words like, DNA upgrade, like, that's so confusing to me. Like, I want to understand the mechanics of it. Like, what are you really saying? And like, very few people out there ever that explain that in sort of like a demystified, mechanical way.
You know what I realized through my, the work that I did because I started working with people
Yeah.
and what else? You don't complicate things. You
Yeah.
because the universe has a pattern, has the perfection in itself.
Yeah.
You want to apply the energy work onto yourself and others. Even take the meditation. It's that
Yeah.
simple. Just concentrate and quiet your mind down, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't need to build the cathartic grid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The space, that space, the quantum space. No, you don't need that. You just need that simple because we are not physicists, right?
yeah.
Or astrophysicists. So or mathematicians.
Right.
For regular people to develop self-healing abilities, you just need a pure intention, a heart,
Yeah,
open heart, love,
yeah,
and belief that
yeah,
you are powerful.
yeah. I
And it's
totally,
everywhere. You just take it, just morph it into whatever you need it to. What I do, I just take their universal energy and I morph it to the specific purpose. For example, I need to do a clearing today, and I
yeah,
can apply the color spectrum to that, and I can just voice the intention, give a command, okay, with my
yeah,
thought or words. And for example, oh, today I want to do balancing and harmonizing and healing. Then
yeah,
I will, and I will direct it with my mind to the spot on my body where it feels, painful or uncomfortable.
right.
That's simple.
Yeah, and like I also really, really believe that there's no one path. So like even
Oh,
though like I think there are ways, like you even said yourself, like you weren't really spiritual, but it happened to you anyways. You know what I mean? So it's like there's no path. And for me, honestly, the most enlightening things that help me, the things that help me like peel away the programming,
hmm
that part of it
hmm
was plain old fashioned talk therapy
yeah,
and reading, like, and journaling. So,
definitely.
like, the fancy schmancy, like meditation, honestly, it's like good and I do it, but like it has not had anywhere near the same impact
Yeah.
as these other things. And that's just being honest. That's just,
Yes, and what would like to tell the audience, find your path of
yeah,
connecting to your soul.
exactly.
And that's a very individual because we're
Very,
all different. We all have different experiences as a soul
yeah.
throughout multiple incarnations and you know lifetimes.
Yes.
Oh, with that said, I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you for
and
giving me the opportunity. So you gave
yes,
me the courage. I decided, now that I'm doing this, I'm like, well, I'm going to start talking about this stuff now. I'm going to blend it into my Substack and my, Instagram. So,
yeah, soon I will upload this talk.
okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, have a wonderful day.
You too. Yeah.
So much.
Okay. Bye.